the branch secretary of the Tower Hamlets local government Unison branch.
Can everyone hear me okay? Because I'd rather not use the mic if that's all right. Look, as we're in the London Muslim Centre, I want to start by remembering just 2 weeks ago on Saturday when we had thousands of us outside here keeping for the 3rd time in a row the EDL out of Tower Hamlets and the 5th time in a row the EDL out of East London. I think it's important for a few reasons. First, I think it shows you what you can do when you bring together the community, trade unions, political parties, instead of concentrating on what they squabble about, but in unity, what can be achieved. But secondly, because I don't think we can talk about austerity without putting the issue of fighting racism at the centre of it. The reason I say that is whenever you have big crisis in society, you can tell it when Tory politicians reach for the race card. Older people in this room, if there's one political speech of a right-winger you remember in your life, it's Enoch Powell. And even younger people probably know of the River of Blood speech, when they felt that the boom of the 60s was moving towards bust, that racism what the Tories went to. And I think there's a smell of that in the air in Britain today. I guarantee you that in the run-up to Euro elections in 2014 and the general election in 2015, immigration will be at the centre of the right-wing argument. And Canvas quite rightly has raised it, what it means in terms of the NHS. But I think we need to be aware of what it means more widely. If you look at the NHS, and it's interesting, and I'll ask you to do this test. Go next door, go into the Royal London Hospital, and you might think there are some problems there. You might think there aren't enough nurses on some of the wards. You might notice that some of the wards aren't even open. But do you really think the biggest problem you go in there, that there will be scores of women clad in a niqab causing massive problems to patients? Is this really, does anyone think, the problem we face in the NHS? But that's what Jeremy Hunt thinks, or rather doesn't think. It's what he's trying to stir up. And when they reach for that racism card, I think it's important that those who are fighting austerity make sure that we don't allow any concessions towards it. I mean, I'll be honest with you, I have seen people in face masks in the Royal London Hospital. I've got doctors in the room, so I have to be careful what I say. I found myself in a room. Someone came and gave me drugs to knock me out, and they were all wearing face masks, and it was very scary. It's called an operating theatre. Now, they were wearing them for appropriate reasons. How many people really believe that people wearing the niqab is a huge problem? And it distresses me when then you get people who are dressing up as if they're in favour of women's liberation, as if telling Muslim women what they're allowed or not allowed to wear, as if that's liberating women. Or if you think about it even further, creating conditions that make it hard for Muslim women to go to work, how is that contributing towards women's liberation? Now, it's a diversion in a concessionary argument, but it's important. Just as when they say the problem in the NHS is health tourists. Everyone's coming up, instead of going on holidays, they're all coming to Britain so they can steal our healthcare. That's really what the problem in the NHS is. Now, I was at Whit's Cross on Saturday, and it was a fantastic demonstration, but one of the most fantastic things about it, I'll tell you what it was, the number of Filipino nurses leading it. And why that's so brilliant, I'll tell you why it's this, because the NHS was built by people coming from all over the world, contributing their skills, and it still is. When they talk about skill shortages, that they can't get people in the NHS, where do they go to? They go all over the world to bring people here, and now as Cameron said, they'll say, come here and care for us, but by the way, don't expect to get any treatment on the NHS yourself. We cannot allow this kind of thing to happen. And I say that because unfortunately, you expect it from the right wing, you expect it from UKIP, you expect it from Cameron, but sometimes you get the poison even within our own movement. So when I hear Chris Bryant talking about the problem is that migrant workers are taking jobs from people, and even at Labour conference, dressing it up, we can't allow that poison inside our movement because we need to be united. Well, I've said about the NHS, and I'll still talk about it because the demonstration's on Saturday, but if you take it, isn't it obvious what our problem is? It's PFI. It's that £100 million goes out of this trust to pay for PFI before any patient care whatsoever. And then they say, well, of course, what can we do now? It's contracted, it's here, it's a fact of life. Well, this Wednesday, firefighters were taking strike action. And most of them, when they started work, they had a contract. And that contract was, after 30 years of frontline firefighting in a dangerous job, you can have your pension. But that contract can be torn up, can't it? Why can't the contract for PFI schemes? Why can't we tell the parasites you're not taking our money out of the NHS? And again, I'll go to there's not the money. Now, I don't have much time, so I must give you one argument. When they say there's not money, it's very interesting. Have people heard this thing called quantitative easing? Does anyone know what it is? QE. It's very simple. The government prints money. They print money. Now, I say this about this because I used to know a caretaker from our council who used to practice quantity evening in a garage in Bethnal Green. And older people in the room have probably had a few £20 notes that I'm told were very, very good. Unfortunately, his quantitative evening, quantitative easing ended up with him in Pentonville prison. But I asked myself, if you can print money and give it to the banks who did such a good job before, didn't they, with their lending, why can't you simply put it straight into the NHS, straight into building houses and homes that people need? The money's there, I mean, it's physically there. They're just running it off the printing presses. It's what they chose to do. Now, I just want to finish with 2 points. The first really is to echo, and if I could strengthen the point that Lindsay made, because one of the biggest problems we face is firstly people saying there's not an alternative, and then they say there's no point resisting. There's no point fighting. Well, like Lindsay, I would echo. Look at what happened on the vote on Syria. For years they told us you're wasting your time campaigning against wars, but it's that campaign that stopped this government going to war. Look at the announcement at the Labour Party conference. I don't believe for one moment that Labour would have announced they were going to scrap the bedroom tax if it wasn't for the Work for the Benefit Justice campaign, if it wasn't people refusing evictions. It's that fight that's forced Labour, let's be honest, reluctantly, very reluctantly, to change their mind. I mentioned what will seem like a small strike, Hovis. Now, how many people had heard of Hovis workers? Maybe if you're old enough, you remember the old Hovis adverts, those lovely nostalgic. People have talked about the evil of zero-hours contracts, as if there's nothing you could do about it. Hovis workers, in an industry where it's very hard to organise, have scored a real victory against zero-hour contracts. And the Bakers Union. And the Bakers Union, people don't think of the Bakers Union as a fantastic issue. I remember it being broken in a national strike many years ago. It shows you that resistance really does work. So I just want to finish by echoing what people have said. We have to build resistance locally. Everyone who was at Whipps Cross, I don't think anyone who went to that demonstration on Saturday at Whipps Cross wouldn't have been inspired by it. It was 500 people, but it had spirit. It had workers, it had the community, it felt about people. So we've got to make sure they try and win. On the 8th of October, we've got to get as many people we can from right across the Barts Trust. We can have no divide and rule. Cuts all right at Barts as long as we're not in London. Next Wednesday, when the Next Wednesday, Allahu Akbar, don't worry, the call to prayer comes first. There'll be a little gap there. Firefighters are striking from 12 to 4. One thing I will say in particular for people in Tower Hamlets, but it's true more generally. When you think of the idea of firefighters being told that you have to continue to the age of 60 to put yourself in burning buildings in order to rescue other people, one of the things we should remember that the last 2 firefighters to die in fires in London were from the station round the road, from Whitechapel. So the idea that firefighters should be forced to work for 60. Third thing is a little suggestion around the 5th of November. I don't think we've ever seen the banner next door from the Communication Workers Union at Whitechapel. They've got a beautiful banner, and on it it's got Postman Pat. I think on the 5th of November we should get Postman Pat out all around the country to say no Royal Mail sell-off, as much direct action aimed at the government as we can. Last thing, like everyone else, I hope we all meet again on Sunday in Manchester. There are still places in our local coach. Let's all get there, let's build a movement to win.